having been able to comparing these two worlds, right, of academia and traditional grant. So you have to sit down and write grants for 6 months, and then it get rejected 10 times, and then you get some money, versus you go do something that's more in the, you talked about before, in the influencer realm. You do something small and you just get tons of money, and you feel like, my God, why even waste my time?
Right. You create your own destiny a little bit.
You create your own destiny. Life is, definitely, things are changing, things are evolving, and you have to, be dynamic and flexible.
Yeah.
For sure.
But also, when you have a good skill at communicating, like you, take advantage of it. You know what I mean? Like
appreciate it.
That's a big thing, because you'll see, I've seen it both ways. I've seen scientists who are brilliant. They're just not like great talkers or bringing it down to the level of the average man being able to understand. And, they're going to rely more on the behind the scenes stuff. And I get that. But then when you have guys who can kind of make it digestible and be passionate about it and make it fun, it also does a lot for society too.
It does a lot. Yeah, no, I agree. And look, beside that, like, I feel like something that I really love is science. And I love explaining science as well. So it's a passion of mine. Talking about science and talking about scientific ideas is really something that I love. So, and really during my entire career, when I speak to young students and I see their face light up when you tell them about the brain, or it's just very rewarding. So
of course
it is.
Of course. Now this whole journey starts with your own sleep paralysis and everything like that. Now as far as I know, I've never experienced that before. But to go back, just to review, because you explained it at the very beginning, the first time that you had it as a teenager, you felt like you were awake, but your whole body couldn't move. You're calling out to your parents, trying to get help. And then you see like a monster in the corner, and it comes over to you, and it's like pressing down on you. So the connotation is that you are still technically asleep, but you feel like you're woken up in the very room that you're in. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Okay.
And that's exactly what's happening in the brain. Exactly what's happening.
So the brain has created this illusion that you're awake. You're not.
Exactly. So in the brain, what you have is you have two systems. The sensory systems, which are out here, the outer layer of the brain, it's called the perceptual cortex, out here. That part of the brain...
Just keep this pointed to you. Sorry.
Yeah. This part of the brain is involved in sensory perception of the world. Okay? And so that part literally turns on even though you are still in REM sleeping. So sleep paralysis is a REM phenomenon. It's a rapid eye movement sleep phenomenon. And as we mentioned, during REM sleep, during REM, you have vivid and lifelike dreams, right?
Yes.
You said that. And so sleep paralysis emerges out of REM. It comes out of REM. So it's a REM phenomenon. And literally what it is that your brain remains stuck in REM, right? So it's in REM, it's stuck in the REM. So it has all the physiological features of REM. It has the paralysis. It has you can't move. Your eyes are moving from side to side, which is also a REM thing. It's a REM system. And you might ask, by the way, Julian might ask, well, if you're paralyzed, you can't move or speak. How come your eyes are moving? What's that about? And I'll just tell you, it's a different circuit in the brain. Simple answer. There's a different circuit for your eyes. That's why you can move your eyes.
Yeah, they're wired directly into it.
Yeah, you can put it that way. You can put it that way.
He's like, no.
Now, sometimes what can happen is that when you are in REM, your perceptual systems can go, oh, I'm going to wake up right now, even though you are in REM. So it's almost like you switch a button, like a turn on and off switch gets stuck between on and off. Like it turns on perceptually so you can see your surroundings. You become aware of yourself. Your eyelids can move, but you're still stuck in the paralysis of REM. The REM stage of sleep and the paralysis part remains. So there's a decoupling of these two systems, the paralysis system and the perceptual system. So that's what REM sleep is all about. But also you have a lot of the features of dream sleep and REM sleep as well. So let me go into that. I think will be interesting.
Yeah, this is very interesting.
So now when you are in REM, you're dreaming. Take the dream world. When you are in dreams, are dreams bizarre, strange, illogical?
Yes.
Why is that the case? I'll tell you.
I've always described them as but I'm using the word, so it's a cop-out. I've always described it as like fever dreams, right? Where you can take a movie character and suddenly like he's still that character, but he's your buddy now that you grew up with and you're driving in a taxi somewhere. It has nothing to do with the plot, you know?
Well put. Exactly. And the reason is simple. In the brain, right here, it's called the DLPFC on the prefrontal region. These parts of the brain, this part shuts down during REM. The logical, serial thinking part of the brain shuts down. And so that's why my sense of logic and agency and building cohesive stories out of the window, literally because a part of the brain that has to do with serial and logical and cohesive thinking shuts down during REM. Literally, that is the simple explanation for why dreams are strange and bizarre. That's the first explanation.
So it totally shuts down, so you can't distinguish between logical and illogical, hypothetically.
The world becomes strange and bizarre because your logic centers shut down.
Is it similar? I'm sorry, I just want to ask this because I thought of it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to break your flow, but is it similar to like the phenomenon of some sort of psychedelic experience like Alice in Wonderland?
We'll come to that.
Okay.
But good. Thanks for the reminder. We'll get to that because
Okay.
I'd like to cover that. It's not exactly. This part is not.
It's different.
It's different, but the LSD experience is also part of the dream experience. I'll get to that in a second. So you have the DLPFC shutting down. The world is illogical. First component. Now, sometimes Julian finds himself on a spaceship and he flies in the spaceship and everything is just quickly, he's whisked up in the air and he's flying.
Yeah.
Why? Well, that's because behind your ears, you have a vestibular system. The vestibular system is involved in sense of balance, sense of me being here, but then I'm over here. And so this allows you to create balance in the brain. The neurons in the vestibular system are overactive in REM. Simple explanation, illogical, but also your balance centers are hyperactive. So you become like this, out of balance. Things become pretty fleeting, right? That's one. Second, the emotional core of the brain, the limbic structure behind your ear, there's a limbic center called the emotional center. It's about 30% more active in REM sleep, in your dream. And because of that, dreams are highly instinctual, emotional. You are desirous of things, of emotional stuff, maybe women or whatever. That's because 30% more activity in the emotional, instinctual part of the brain. Okay? 3 parts. 4. The anterior cingulate and empathy part of the brain that's involved in creating other people, hyperactive. That's why the brain is populated, the dream is populated by a lot of people. Your dreams are literally are social. Your dreams are full of people.
Real and fake.
Well, they're all fake in the sense that, I see what you're saying. Imagined versus people you met in real life.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my dream last night.
Gotcha. I understand. Well, your brain creates these mix, right? So it could be people that you think, could be real people or people that you imagine. Yeah, it could be both. But the key point is that it's populated by a lot of people. All right? Tons of people. So you have that. So the theory of mind part of the brain is hyperactive. That's another part. Let's continue. Dreams build narratives. So the hippocampus part of the brain, the memory part of the brain, builds stories and takes from your memory. So it's literally people you knew from real life and weaves them into the narratives as well. So the hippocampus is there.
Got it.
The motor regions of the brain are active, and for that reason, you are moving around in your dream. You can move. That's the motor regions.
So it's creating the illusion that you're moving.
Correct. So basically, in a nutshell, when I'm moving when I'm awake, I move my arm from A to B in space. I'm using my motor cortex on the left side. Neurons fire. I move from A to B. This is motor cortex. I close my eyes and imagine myself moving from A to B, and my motor cortex will actually fire as well, even though I'm not moving. They'll partially fire, just by imagining it. When I'm dreaming, because I'm imagining myself moving, the motor cortex fires away. Okay? So you have all these different centers of the brain being active, and that's why the dream landscape has this flavor to it. Bizarreness, strangeness, sense of agency is gone. I don't know that I'm dreaming when I'm dreaming. Why is that the case? Well, again, the DLPFC is involved in self-agency, not only logic, but also self-agency. So I am unaware of myself dreaming. Okay. The TPJ regions we mentioned before, that's involved in self-body image, shuts down. This region shuts down, and for that reason, you feel like you're here, but then suddenly you occupy somebody else's body, or you might feel yourself in a bird's body, or you see yourself from the outside like a Netflix movie. Why is that the case? Well, your sense of self and body image becomes fluid. That's the TPJ shutting down. You literally have your brain chemistry and your brain milieu dictating what you see in your dream. Now, if Julian is dreaming, and his brain is firing in this bizarre pattern, and he's seeing a certain dream because of that, and then I come in and I fire some light over here and I put some fire, and the smoke overwhelms you, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your dream now, you will incorporate that smoke into your dream as well. So you'll see yourself in a high house where it's like there's fire and you're trying to escape. So we can externally affect the dream as well. So not only your internal brain environment, also the external environment can affect the dream content. So these are very crucial points. The final point, I don't want to ramble too much, but
this is great.
A final point on this is that you may notice, and I've had this dream a ton, and a lot of people tell me they have these dreams, is that the dream that you're trying to walk, but you can't. You feel like your legs are heavy. Joey is, your legs are heavy, and the monster is chasing you. You're trying to get away, but you can't. You're like, I'm stuck. What's going on there? This is simply your motor cortex firing, so you're moving. But at the same time, in the brain stem, the lower part of the brain, there's a structure that's called a central motor generator. Central motor generator. If the neurons there will go to the cortical regions and the outer layer of the brain and compete with the motor cortex. So if the central motor generator in the lower part of the brain is involved in automatic movements and the outer layer is involved in actual voluntary movements, the automatic center will sometimes, because it fires sporadically, like it will overwhelm. It will overwhelm the motor cortex, and for that reason, even though you feel like you can move, but then suddenly you feel like you cannot move. Okay, understand?
Yes.
It's a very crucial point, actually. That explains why dreams feel so fleeting, and you feel like you have control 1 minute, but then the other minute you don't have control.
Yes.
And it has to do with the fact that you have tons of neurons in the lower part of the brain overwhelming the more voluntary cortical regions.
It's like they're competing with each other.
They're competing, and the lower parts are more aggressive, and when they fire sporadically, suddenly they will overwhelm it. So if you are walking and you feel like you have control, suddenly you don't have control. And that's the automatic regions out-competing, out-wrestling these outer layers. And then you might add, before you go there, well, what's the monster all about? The monster is literally a physical representation of your limbic emotional fear centers being 30% more active. So it manifests as a monster chasing you.
So it's like if I had the activity monitor open on my computer and I were watching all the different places it was using the unified memory in. These are all the places it's capable of using it.
Yep.
But depending on what I have open, Chrome, Spotify, YouTube, which would be in Chrome, Adobe Premiere, Adobe Photoshop, and depending on what I'm actively using, some levels are going to be more, meaning they're going to take a bigger piece of the pie. If I'm understanding correctly, this is what's happening with different centers of your brain during a dream. You just don't control what's open and what's not.
That's a beautiful metaphor. It's a beautiful metaphor.
Thank you. Look at that.
No, I love it. I love it.
He's like, no, you still might be.
Look, Julian, what I'm trying to say, and you've put it very nicely in that way. Your brain is set on there's certain parameters, with this part being slowed down, this part being slowed down, this part being overactive, creating the way your brain will express based on that. Literally, I can give you another example. As you know, I'll be teaching a course on love at the Peterson Academy in a few days. And so when you are in love, for example, let's analogy to the dream state. When you fall in love, your prefrontal cortex will shut down. Your logical part of the brain will shut down.
Yep.
Serotonin will go down. I'm talking about the infatuation stage. So serotonin, which is involved in well-being, will go away. You will have, when serotonin goes down, you become OCD. You start obsessing all the time. Okay? When you fall in love, dopamine goes up. You become like a cocaine head. You become like a crackhead. Okay? I'm serious.
I understand exactly what you mean. Yes.
You have tons of dopamine. All right? The TPJ region of the brain that has to do with empathy and like the psychopath, like trying to understand another person's mind, becomes hyperactive because you're always trying to figure out what the girl is, or girl is thinking right now. So that becomes hyperactive. Okay, cortisol goes up, just like Julian when he's stressed. When in the infatuation stage of love, cortisol is through the roof. That's why you can't stay there for a very long time. 3 to 6 months, you have to either break up or become a stable couple. Otherwise, you'll just wear yourself out. Literally, what I'm trying to say is that the dream state, or whether you are on cocaine or whether you are newly in love, the brain has a way of organizing itself, and your behavioral output will reflect that. The mental activity will reflect exactly how the brain is set in the default state of that situation.
That's perfectly explained.
Cool.
Joe, we're watching a superstar being born today. I don't know if you haven't picked up on that. I know you have, but I think you're going to have a future on a lot of screens around here. But
thank you, brother.
The way you explain things is really amazing, and it also, like, everyone out there, these are human experiences, right? We all dream. We all can think of it like from our perspective and be like, oh, maybe that's why this or that. But one of the things I keep on thinking about while you're going through all the different parts of the brain that are working for and against each other in some ways to create a dream is the fleeting nature of those dreams. And what I mean by that is I will dream vividly and know that I dream vividly.
Yeah.
I will usually remember most of the dream the second I wake up at 6:15 in the morning. But there are some days where by 6:21, I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
And some days at 6:21, I remember all of it, and I remember it days later and months later and years later. Right. Like last night's dream, I can tell you play by play what happened. Right. The dream I had like 3 nights ago, I remember it was fucking crazy. I couldn't even tell you where it was or who was in it.
Right.
Why is that? Why do we have like selective memory of dreams?
It's a good point. So I always make it a point to emphasize that the whole night, right? So you have 8 hours of sleep. Julian has 6 or 7. Most of us have 8.
I do 7 or 8 now.
7 is good. So that's 7 hours, right? And that whole sleep architecture, 1/3 is in REM. In REM, you have dreams. Whether you remember them or not, you actually dream in REM the entire night. Entire REM stages dream. In fact, in the other stages of sleep, you also have some fragments of dreams. The dreams have less of a story plot. They are less cohesive. They are less story-like, but there are still some dreams in the other stages. So you have tons of opportunity to dream. Now, Julian is asking, then how come I don't remember my dreams, right? Why do I have a few dreams that I do remember? And the reason is this. Remember I told you that serotonin shuts off. Remember I told that?
Yes.
Serotonin goes down during REM. And noradrenaline also goes down during REM. That's why things are spacey and all that. That's the REM. That's a REM phenomenon. So these two chemicals go down, and because serotonin and noradrenaline shuts down in REM sleep, you need those chemicals in order to take memories from the hippocampus, the memory part of the brain, and place it in the cortex to store the memories. Whoa. In other words, you have the memories, but they're not stored. The brain, because of these two chemicals being absent, is much more output fixated than input fixated. Meaning input, it doesn't store new memories, but it just builds stories all the time. It's output generated. It's output fixed. And the reason for that is also, there's another chemical, and I'm throwing chemicals at you, but it's important. And it's very simple, actually. There's a chemical called acetylcholine in the lower part of the brain that fires up the brain, so it's always in the business of creating new stories, but never because of that hippocampal region being deactivated and not deactivated, but lacking these chemicals to store them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's basically that. That's it. The hippocampus can't store new memories in the same manner.
But sometimes it fires in a way that it does.
And this is really it. This is it. Then when you wake up, and this is the crucial point of all this, when you wake up, the wakefulness process itself entails a surge of serotonin and noradrenaline flooding your brain. That's why when you actually wake up, the dreams you do remember are the last few minutes of the dreams you just had. You don't remember the whole REM thing. That's actually what you remember are only the last few minutes of dreams.
The one last night was so detailed, so many layers. That's only a few minutes?
Well, we'll get into that too. Why dreams feel so expanded. Let's get into that.
Yeah, please. I'm talking, this was like...
Yeah. No, it feels a long time. Well,
it's a full movie.
That's a full movie. So just to conclude on this, the reason why you can't remember your dreams is because serotonin and noradrenaline, the chemicals helping your hippocampus store them, are absent. That's the whole story. And then when you wake up and you jolt awake, you remember your dreams because serotonin and noradrenaline comes online. That's a simple story for that. Then Julian says, well, look, it felt like hours, like Inception. It feels like, years.
Yeah.
Maybe. It turns out when you record the neurons of a rat as it's running through a maze, so it's running through a maze and you record the neurons in a region called the hippocampus. We talked about the memory part. The fire, neurons go drr, drr, drr. Then the mice are awake and you look at their neurons again, and it turns out the same neurons will fire when they are awake as when they were dreaming. So, let me get this right. The neurons of the hippocampus of the mice firing a certain pattern when they're asleep, and the same neurons fire when they are awake.
Okay.
There's a replay of neuronal firing. It's like the same. It's like this. They're doing the same thing. Okay, a mirroring. Now you go. Here's the interesting part. So the neurons not only fire when they are awake, but they also they fire about 50% slower.
Okay.
50% slower when they are in REM. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when they are awake, the neurons fire fast. When they are asleep, the neurons fire slow, about 50% slower. So this might explain why when I am sleeping on a couch and I'm sleeping and then I feel like it's been 2 hours and I wake up and look at the clock and it's been like 2 minutes. It's been like 2 minutes. The reason for that is potentially that the neurons in my brain fired 25 to 50% slower when I was in REM. So
and it's not perfect math. It doesn't mean that because it was 2 minutes, therefore in your brain it's now 4 minutes. It could be like 2 hours. It's distorted.
It's distorted.
Essentially, because it's not, the percentage isn't related to the percentage of time. It's related to the percentage of like activity. Therefore, some of that activity being reduced means that your perception's gone.
Correct. And to be honest, we don't really know how this works out in humans. We don't have a real story for that. It's hard to really do these experiments in humans. We can't really crack open the skull and record the neurons in the same way as we can in rats.
Right.
But it's a good indicator, the fact that we know that rats, the neurons are slowed down by 50%, the same neurons when they are in REM. But let me tell you a different experiment that I wanted to do with Ramachandran. So Ramachandran and I wanted to do an experiment on exactly sleep, on time perception in dreams. And this was a experiment we came up with, and I took it to Alan Hobson, one of the greatest dream researchers of the last 100 years. Not to brag or anything. I knew him a little bit. Okay, to brag.
You got clout. It's cool. Yeah.
So I took it to him. I said, look, this experiment here, what do you think about this? We have a guy, let's call him Joe. Joe is sleeping. And as Joe is sleeping, I will ascertain using neural recordings, EEGs in his brain. EEG is like a net-like thing on the brain. You record the activity of the brain, and you kind of can figure out whether the person is in REM. You can record facial muscles and all that as well to see if he's paralyzed and in REM. So you do that. You know he's in REM sleep. And once he's in REM, dreaming away, Baland will come in, and I will sprinkle water on Joe sleeping. I'll go, and then here, this is what I'll do. I will wake Joe up instantly. I'll go wake him up. Wake up, Joe. Okay? Like a few seconds, maybe. Wait a few seconds and then wake him up. Wake him up. The question is, will Joe, if I ask Joe, what did you dream about? Would he go, A, this is the first scenario. I was walking in New Jersey. I saw the clouds come out. It became darker. I took out my umbrella and it started to rain slowly. But I also just called my mom, telling her to also, it's mom, it's raining. Remember that. Remember the umbrella as well. And I had a sort of long story. The person builds a long story around that. That's the first scenario. Scenario B is the following. I wake Joe up and I ask him about his dream, and he'll go, "Oh, I was just walking and suddenly I was hit by a tsunami. I was just hit by a tsunami. I woke up." Okay, these are the only two possibilities. The question is, which one is correct? The first one would imply that dreams are heavily slowed down compared to real life, because remember I
Yes.
put water on him and woke him up after like a second or two, right? The second one he's just like, oh, I was hit by water like a tsunami. Which one is it? We don't know, and this is one of the huge. This is such a simple experiment. We don't know the answer to this experiment, but it could potentially reveal a lot of things. And Hobson was excited about this experiment, but we haven't done it.
You got to do that one.
You got to do that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do dreams come from?
It's a good question. Where do dreams come from? So for a long time, people thought these were messages from God and divine realms. And to be honest, we can't really exclude anything in the sense that just because we know there's a brain chemistry and there's a brain substrate to dreams, we can't for sure know if there's something coming from the outside. We can't know that. So we'll just keep that possibility open for a scientist 100 years from now. We won't go into that, but that was the belief for a long time. So where do they come from? Let's say we don't know, other than we can look at the brain chemistry and the functional activity of the brain and say, your dreams are a product of this, of this activity. But you can go further than that and say, well, it's not merely the activity of the brain and the neurons firing in this bizarre synchrony that's creating the dream. There's also other factor. It could be things like your unconscious memories of life and experiences. We know that the hippocampus, as I mentioned, is hyperactive in REM. So definitely you have a lot of activity of the hippocampus spilling over. And so you see yourself replaying some of your life experiences. In fact, dreams don't just replay real life events. They tend to be more sort of around core themes and fears and things you're happy with, rather than just mere replay. Julian is not merely seeing himself, walking around in New Jersey and eating pizza in the deli. He's not seeing that. He's seeing more of emotionally important themes and symbols.
Even if they're changed from what reality is.
Even though they're changed. You can think of dreams are more like an Indiana Jones, and it's an exploratory process where your brain takes these visual scenarios and throw them at Julian, and says, look, here's Julian is in a space suit, and he's walking around in Buckingham Palace, and then see how you react to that. If you're emotionally aroused, it will say, oh, this is important. Let's go further down this route, and you explore it a bit more. And then it takes another scenario. Maybe it introduces a new colleague from work, and you see her suddenly wearing not Batman, the lady in Batman, the
Catwoman?
She becomes Catwoman, for example, or, bizarre,
Anne Hathaway was a good Catwoman. Yeah.
Something strange and bizarre will happen. And the point of all this, your brain is literally exploring scenarios and testing them against your expectations and your emotions. And if it's important, it'll go down that route more. So that's the first element. Second element, you can think of dreams as a visual. I'm trying to be like you now and use metaphors. So it's like a museum, an art museum, rather than actual verbal stuff. Meaning that it takes you and shows you these indescribable things, like walking around an art museum and being aroused, and you can't really put words on what you're seeing. It's so profoundly evocative emotionally. You go, oh my God, I'm seeing the sun and the moon bowing in front of me. I am seeing, this television splitting into becoming a rainbow and flying off. And things are indescribable. And that's because the brain, it seems, is using more the right hemisphere, which is more the art part of the brain. It recruits a lot of those centers for sure, and less linguistic. It uses language. We do speak in dreams, but it's less linguistically describable. It's more of metaphorically abstract. That's a very crucial point, actually, of the whole dream experience. The fact that you have that these are like that art museum metaphor, that things are visually evocative and just profound and indescribable often.
But they often, I'm one of these guys that likes to think about the meaning of my dreams because they have these strange, non-linear parallels to things in my life with real people mixed with some
bizarreness.
not real people as well, but the real people are in a totally different context.
Yeah.
But then the actions they take or you take with them in the dream explains something else that's either like something you need to do in your life or something that's missing in your life.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's almost like emotional processing. It's a way of, it's a reminder, but it's really one theory, just to go back to theory land here, but it's kind of what you're saying. There's a theory called threat simulation, which is merely fancy word for saying that dreams is a way of exposing you to terrifying situations and see how you survive in them. In other words, if you go around and if you're walking in a landscape and you jump over a river and you're running away from a serial killer or a saber-toothed tiger or something like that, and you survive that scenario, you're more likely to face situations like that in your real life and survive. The brain is never wasteful. Your brain is never redundant. Your brain doesn't want to waste energies and resources. So it's using that time to build new circuitry in the brain, plastically rewire your brain so you don't have to go out and chase that lion or run away from that lion. You already have the circuits laid down while you are dreaming. So that's effectively one view. Your point is also similarly, and it's related, it's valid, that you're learning how to cope emotionally with other people. So dreams are hypersocial, and they're hyper emotional as well. And they tend to be more negative. And we have more negative social encounters in dreams.
Yeah, why
means
is that?
That's important because your brain goes, look, for me, Baland, to be having a chit chat with a girl in my dream is going to be less important for my survival than having this fight with a serial killer and escaping that. Which one is more likely to help you survive? Well, the emotional interaction with the girl can be important too. You learn skills, but it's skewed and biased towards more negative interaction because your brain is always trying to help you survive.
Even if it's far less realistic. Like the first one with the girl could be very realistic to something you're dealing with a girl in real life right now.
That is true, but the brain in dreams are generally not very realistic. It tries to use the more extreme examples to be more evocative. And that's the whole point.
But does it use extreme examples of like symbolism that doesn't make sense while the examples are actually very real things?
They make emotionally sense. That's the point. I think they do make emotional sense. So even though in your dreams, the thing is with dreams, you can have your dream, you can be in your bedroom, you can be in this apartment here, and it will be a palace. It will literally be transformed into a palace. But it still feels like your own room. You don't question it. And that's the whole point of dream. The fact that you can have this moon and the stars prostrate in front of you, but it feels normal in the dream. And that's because somehow logic is turned off, but emotion is hyperactivated. So we don't find it bizarre and abstract. And that's a key point. Emotionally, you cope with the experience and you learn from it. And so that's why we can even though it's bizarre and strange, the whole serial killer attacking you and you're trying to run away. And by the way, the serial killer has 3 heads. But still, it can teach you something about emotional coping in a similar emotionally evocative scenario. On the monster thing, I do want to point something out here.
The mantra thing?
The monster thing.
Oh, monster
and
thing.
And the point is that, have you noticed in your dreams, the monsters in your dreams are terrifying, but they look a certain way typically. And the way they look is that the monster has to be terrifying, but not that terrifying that they can't be remembered. There has to be some level of terror, but if it instead of 3 heads has like 100 heads, it wouldn't work.
I'm not going to say that's never happened. I'll say this, and now fucking tonight I'll dream about a monster. But I don't really have the monster come into my dreams ever.
Yep.
So the only type of dream that involves like me running for my life from death usually involves like a vehicle or something like that. Like a car is driving at me or the plane's going down. I'm like, well, fuck. And then like you'll wake up and you're like, like almost you were falling from the sky. But a lot of things that are like the monster are the threat of something happening.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever sit with people and like break down their dreams? And like what it means?
Yeah, I do get those often. People ask me often about their
And
dreams.
can you figure out like how it like sometimes when they're describing it, like how it makes sense from
Yeah,
a brain standpoint?
I try to interpret it differently. I try.
Yeah.
I try.
Because like I'm not a scientist, but I'm always trying to do that because there will be some sort of theme that is the hypothetical monster. It's not a real monster, but it's like a threat in the real world. And even if sometimes it'll be called something different and it's not like a actual thing, but it's directly parallel to something that I'm like, oh, I was just talking about that with someone and what a danger that is, or that kind of thing, as if it's almost like, man, I should hit that again, or because I also have a show too, so I cover topics sometimes of things that are like a problem. I don't know if that's like related to what I do, and I'm always thinking about this stuff, but it's more of a, I describe it less like someone holding a gun to your head and more like you watching a movie of a gun to someone else's head and watching it go off. It's more like that.
No, I agree. It has that unpredictability about it, and it's fleeting. But again, it's the neurons firing a certain way, the chemicals being in a certain certain state and things like that. I want to also touch on the whole, you said the psychedelics and all that, because
you're reading my mind.
Yeah,
you in my head right now?
Yeah, I did.
God damn it! Put a fucking neuron on me or something.
So, why do dreams have this kind of bizarre, strange, eerie feel to them? Why do they kind of remind you of the psychedelic state? You might ask that. And the reason is simple. The mystical aspect of dreams and the highly sort of personalized cosmic aspect of dreams is that, this is a theory, of course, but it's very plausible. I remember I talked about serotonin shutting down in REM sleep, and therefore in dreams not being absent in dreams, right? And this is when serotonin overall shuts down, often what you can find is that other receptors for serotonin might go up all of a sudden. And this is a feature of the brain. You shut down one receptor or one family of neurons or chemicals, and it might find another way to come back online. So there's a receptor called the serotonin 2A receptor, okay? Fancy word for the ghost receptor in the brain. This is literally the ghost receptor, meaning that when you take psychedelics, when you take psilocybin, LSD, all these drugs, you will titillate and tickle these serotonin 2A receptors, and in effect, the world feels mysterious. It feels, everything becomes salient. This water becomes salient. This becomes salient. It becomes imbued with meaning. Okay? Now, in dreams, we think that because serotonin shuts down, these receptors, these serotonin 2A receptors, might actually get a boost. And that might explain why dreams have this mystical, overall eerie quality to them. Simply for that reason. It's quite interesting, but it might explain it. It might explain it. The fact that you have these serotonin 2 receptors suddenly coming alive.
So it makes you, if I'm understanding that correctly, it makes everything feel like it has a spirit to it, and like it's existing. It's not just atoms.
Yeah, it's again another layer to all the brain components I told you. This is another layer. Besides things being bizarre, strange, and flying, things flying all over the place, there's also a mystical and almost spiritual layer to it, and that's the serotonin 2A receptor that you can also artificially take by using drugs.
Do you think that like the ghost receptor and this concept? How do I want to ask this? I don't want to overcomplicate this. I want this digestible so that you can understand it and you see where I'm going here. But because we are suspended from reality when we're asleep. It's literally this thing that every organism does. Like you got to just like go to sleep to let the body rebuild itself during time. But you fall. Like that's how we say it. You fall asleep. Like you're falling out of reality in a way, and you are then, the brain goes into rebuild mode. And as a part of this rebuild mode, it almost I guess it's elevator music is the way that it fires all the different parts of the brain for you to dream and like be distracted. Like, ooh, look over here while we're fixing all your cells and shit like that. Is is there any science or is there any idea you have that could link this to some sort of otherworldly or spiritual endeavor? Does that make sense? It's a little bit of a woo-woo way of asking it, but is there anything that you've, even if it's not proven yet, that you've been like, ooh, that could tie to that? Yeah.
This is a very interesting and a deep question, actually. So, as you know, I'm a religious person myself. I'm Muslim, I'm spiritual. I believe in other realms. So, by default, I become a bit more open to other realities.
Were you like that as a child too, or did that develop later?
That came later. But the more scientific became, the more spiritual I became.
Wow,
that's actually true. I became more spiritual. In my childhood, look, when I was in the gang, I knew nothing about spirituality. My family is not very religious, or they don't have
interesting.
So this is something that
you just developed that yourself.
It came with the whole, when I started to study science and all that. I just felt that there was more to the world than life. So this is something that I grew into. But I do think that other dimensions could exist. So consciousness. We know what consciousness, consciousness, what is consciousness? Consciousness is something inside of you, the awareness of you, of the world. You have something called qualia. Qualia is, and I get to the question, but qualia is the sensation of, when I drink water, the sensation of water, or the redness of red, or the pain of pain. That's called qualia. So it's a fascinating thing because we all have this. Okay, this is humanly very, very crucial. And then inside the brain, spirituality and dreams and spirituality and the brain is very hard. It's very hard to pin down, but it seems like if consciousness can be pinned down to one part of the brain, it would be the limbic center.
The limbic center.
Emotional core of the brain. I'll tell you why. And this is also where if I have epileptic seizures, and it's called temporal lobe epilepsy in the temporal lobe, in the emotional core of the brain, I will literally become more religious. I become more spiritual. I become poetic. I start writing all this religious stuff, and it just become act like a prophet if I get temporal lobe epilepsy. This is well studied. Yeah, this is a neurological disorder where the neurons in that part of the brain go ballistic and they fire. Okay. The temporal lobes is also, it may be part of that part of the brain where consciousness comes about, because if I stimulate it artificially using a current, I will have these vast experiences that are emotionally rich, sensorially rich. I see myself floating outside my body as well, but it's a very rich experience I have of emotion and self as well. To illustrate this point, let me give you the opposite scenario. Let's say the limbic structure dials down. If the limbic structure dials down to the extent that it shuts off, you may develop Cotard syndrome.
Cotard syndrome.
Cotard.
Oh,
okay.
You see, I said Qatar. Everyone's talking about Qatar these days.
Cotard. Exactly. I know what you mean. Yep.
Plus $7,000. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Cotard syndrome is the following. You feel like the world is dead. There's no meaning in the world. Before, in a dream, everything is significant and emotionally salient. When you have Cotard syndrome, everything is dead. Everything is without meaning. There's no meaning to nothing. There's no meaning at all. And in fact, you may look in the mirror and say, I am dead. I'm not alive. And the doctor might say, well, what are you talking about? You're sitting here and having a conversation. You say, yeah, well, I'm having a conversation, but I'm dead. You might poke him with a needle and it bleeds. And he looks at it and he says, and the doctor might say, well, you're bleeding. Do dead men bleed? And he might says, maybe they do after all. Maybe dead men do bleed after all, okay? So he sees himself as dead because of his limbic structures turning off. Coming to your point now, there's also a helmet called the God helmet. God helmet is you put it on. It was Michael Persinger in the 1990s. I think he came up with this concept. The helmet, you put it on, and literally people will feel like they are in one with God. They have spiritual experiences by stimulating the limbic core of the brain. So if there's any part of the brain where spirituality would come about, it would be in the limbic core. Where consciousness would come about as well would be in the limbic part, the emotional part of the brain. Emotion, in fact, saying this, the emotional part of the brain would be a disservice because it's involved in such a vast array of human experiences. But that's what I would say. So in dreams, that part of the brain is dialed up. That's why it can feel spiritual and cosmic. But then my mentor Ramachandran once said, how do we know that God is not merely communicating with us using that limbic center? Why do we think that the limbic center is creating God, whereas it could be God communicating with that limbic center? And I think that could be true. I think that personally, I do believe in God and spirits and all that. And so there's nothing negating the fact that God could be speaking to us through brain centers. I mean, how would he speak to us? Right? Imagine a radio. You're a guy 200 years ago, and you walk in a desert, okay? And this desert, and Julian, he sees a radio.
I'd be like, what the fuck?
He takes it and he turns it on, and music comes out of it. Okay, what would you think? You would open it, and you would maybe start breaking some things, and the music would go a little bit, and things would become messy, right? But never in your mind would you have thought, well, this is radio waves coming from somewhere else, creating the music.
No. Yeah.
You would thought that you're messing around with the insides of the radio. It's all that's happening. So in a sense, science is right now in this stage. We are tampering with the brain. We shut this center off, amplify this region, and we see changes. But we cannot negate the fact that other forces might communicate with us from the outside. So did that analogy make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. I don't think I'd open it up. I think I'd like back away, all afraid of it. Like, what the fuck is that?
Right.
It's like, but it's also like impossible to simulate what you would think because we know that reality.
We know that
like
reality.
I was born with all this technology around me. So like, if I didn't see it, would I be totally afraid of it? I would assume so.
I assume so.
I'm not really sure.
By the way, you'll have to use the restroom if you don't.
Oh, sure. We'll be right back. So that term's ghost receptor, you were saying? That's like a real scientific term?
I came up with it, actually.
You came up with it.
yeah,
That's
and
a sick term.
One of my
That's in the title.
Yeah, it's the title of the paper. I think it's called "The Ghost Receptor in the Brain: Why We See Freddy Krueger During Dream or Sleep Paralysis," or something like that. And I published this.
Why we see Freddy Krueger?
Yeah, something like that. It's about the Freddy Krueger phenomenon and why we see the Hatman and all that.
Can you explain that, the Hatman thing?
Hatman.
Was I just talking with you about that the other day?
Yeah, in the last episode.
Right, yeah.
So why do people see these Freddy Krueger-like monsters and people with hats and all that in sleep paralysis, or these states that are between wakefulness and dreams? And the reason I think is the following. When you are sleeping, first of all, you might say, why do most people just see a shadow in the corner of the room? Why a shadow? What is that about? And here I would say the following. The limbic centers of your brain, emotional core, the fear centers are hyperactive. That's the fear representing as the corner, the monster. And then what's called visual processing, the visual, the act of seeing itself is very hierarchical. It occurs in a hierarchy. So first of all, in the back of your brain, you have a structure in the occipital lobes back in the brain, the visual cortex. It responds to lines and things like and basic shapes, basic lines and shapes. So what I think is that when you have sleep paralysis, for example, your brain says, look, I don't want to hallucinate a monster with detailed a face and a perfect, clothing and all that. I just want to have the basic shape. So I'll just use my visual cortex and then just think about how to get out of this room, escape routes and all that.
Right.
The reason for this, Julian, is that there's 1/3 of the cortex is for vision alone. We have 30 centers for vision. Vision is very costly. It's a very costly process to see. So your brain is always in the business of how can I see things in the world using the most efficient way as possible. So for the brain to just say, look, I'm just going to visualize a shadow over there and the hell with the rest, and I can focus on other things. That's just a way to get out of it. So that's the first step. Now, occasionally then, you might see the shadow moving, right? That's because we have a part of the brain called the MT, the motor, it's called the MT, okay, it's not the motor, but it's called the MT region. It has to do with movement. So the visual process will also recruit that center. And so for that reason, you have movement of the monster. That's part of the visual hierarchy. The next step, think of it as a ladder going next step up. In fact, the MT, if I get a stroke in the MT and I drink a glass of water like this, the water will go like this. It won't flow. It go like like a black and white movie from 100 years ago, it'd go like this. Or if I see a car, I won't see it as floating and moving like this. It will be like...
But yeah, like shitty frame rate.
Exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's the MT. Next, you have in the visual hierarchy, you have something called V4, color vision. Okay. Occasionally, the monster will actually have color. That's because next step in the hierarchy is V4, color. Then in the hierarchy, you have things like face area of the brain. Do you know? The brain has a face area. It's called the fusiform face area. If that region is messed up, and I look at a face, I won't be able to recognize faces. In fact, one of my colleagues, my old friend, he died a few years ago, called Oliver Sacks. You should look him up. He's a famous writer of neurology.
Can you come a little bit this way? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. He's a famous writer of neurology. I'm just mentioning this to brag, but Robin Williams plays him in a movie. Once he was walking here in New York, Oliver Sacks, he was walking here in New York, and he ran into a man. He saw this man. He ran straight into him, and he was like, "This, what's going on?" And then he looked again, and he realized it's actually a mirror, and it's myself I'm looking at. He had prosopagnosia.
Prosopagnosia.
A condition where you can't recognize faces. So the face area of the brain is not working. So that is the fusiform face area. Okay?
Whoa. Yeah, here he is. He even looks like Robin Williams a little bit.
This guy was a phenomenon. So
he's dead. I was just going to ask you if we could bring him on.
Oh, yeah. This guy was a superstar. I mean, this was one of Ramachandran's friends. So because of Ramachandran's, I would meet superstars like this and become friends with them. And
Awakenings.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a great guy. We used to correspond he would write me handwritten letters. Do you remember? Can you imagine this? Handwritten.
I do them.
Yes.
I swear to God. Yeah.
He would write me handwritten letters.
Lost art right there.
He was a very shy guy. He used to when he gave lectures or seminars, he would only have us be 4 or 5 people. Otherwise, he couldn't deliver it. Such a character. Unfortunately, he passed away from I believe it's brain cancer, but
lived a long life though. 92 years old or 82 years old.
Yeah.
When he passed. Wow.
Now, so we have face recognition area of the brain, fusiform face area. Again, that's why you add the face to the monster. Next to the visual hierarchy is the Wernicke's area. It's the meaning part of the brain. It's called the Wernicke's. Again, you recruit that, and then the visual scene become more meaningful, and then finally you have things like the hippocampus part of the brain, the memory part of the brain, and so you recruit memories from your daily life. This would be, I saw a Freddy Krueger movie. I saw my grandmother told me about a story about a monster that looked like this or that, and that I will weave into the narrative, and then the visual scene will look like this. Does that make sense? So you have narrative and memory, meaning, you have depth, you have color, you have movement, you have basic shapes, and that's how your visual process works. Sometimes you just stop at the earlier stages of processing to use those resources to a better purpose, but sometimes you just hallucinate the bloody thing, the whole thing. And that's why some people literally see the Hatman looking like Freddy Krueger, being in color, moving towards you, strangling you.
And it comes in like different forms as well, like culturally too.
That's the memory part of the brain, because that's a part of the visual cortex, and the visual, not the visual cortex, part of the visual hierarchy. And so that for that reason, depending on your cultural narrative, that will spill into the experience.
Have you ever read Metzger's work before?
No.
He's great. Yeah. I'll send you it afterwards. He does some great work on this. Kurt Metzger, talking about the Hatman and all that, different cultural phenomenons. Terrific scientist. I'm surprised you haven't heard of him. But that's, it's everything that you have described today, especially when it comes to dreams, it's psychedelic in a way, no pun intended, but there's a real math to it as well. Yeah. Like you're describing ratios and how the ratios get distorted, like everything you just described there with all the different parts, and then it gets put together and voila, it spits out this thing. Yeah. So people, when their brains decide to do different ratios for them, have wildly different experiences, and it becomes individualized. Yeah. That's kind of cool.
It's very cool. And on that point of vision, a key point to emphasize is that even though vision has this hierarchy and things are going from bottom up to the higher regions, and we create meaning, and we create vision, and we create color and depth and all that. There are as many wires going from the top regions down to the lower centers. And by this, I mean the following. Vision is an active process. So when I see a table, when I see this table here, Julian's table, my brain won't go, oh, here's a table, let me just take all the fragments and slowly create the whole thing. It actually literally will say, I've seen a table like this 100 times, and for that reason, I merely will take a splotch from that table, and then I will recruit from higher centers of memory and send them down to the visual centers and create the image. Meaning, vision is as much or even more perhaps about expectation and interpretation versus actually what's out there. And this is a crucial point.
Vision is as much about interpretation versus what actually
it's a controlled hallucination. Vision is a controlled hallucination. Your perceptual reality is your expectation meeting the data. It's not data just coloring everything.
Yeah.
It's expectation. I expect the world to look like this. Therefore, I will see this, but I will also use the data to match my expectations. That's why if you have damage to the eye, for example, you rely more on expectation when you see the world versus data, because there's an eye damage. Same if you have damage to some of the lower part of the cortex, the visual cortex. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Expectation versus data is always wrestling and battling it out to find the best fit of the world. But if there's an imbalance to that symmetry, eye damage, you literally see the world, and then suddenly you might find there's a monkey sitting there on your table. And I'm not being trying to be funny.
Yeah.
I'm literally, this is called Charles Bonnet syndrome. Eye damage, you will see elephants here, suddenly sitting here, or because your expectation of the world, your conceptual beliefs will color the world. So the world is our created reality is always based on expectation and data meeting each other, not about the actual thing. I see this table, your brain goes, I've seen tables like this 1,000 times, so I'll just pull from memory and create a table much faster than actually going there and taking the whole table in and processing it one at a time, like one fragment at a time. So this is an important part about it. And that's why hallucinations can occur all the time, because, well, not all the time, most of us luckily don't have hallucinations when we are awake, but we are, as humans, prone to them because we have this conceptual overlay to vision. Vision is very conceptually driven. And so if that balance shifts towards more concept driven, you will hallucinate more.
Are dreams, is it a stretch to say dreams are effectively hallucinations?
They are effectively a form of hallucinations. They are not only hallucinations, but they're hallucinations. And we have amnesia as well, we forget them. We are delusional, completely delusional in dreams as well. So it's psychopathy at peak. Delusion, amnesia, hallucinations, and yet it feels all normal, and you wake up and take it for granted. You know?
Now, you said as you went along, we talked about this for 1 minute and then got off it. You said as you went along your scientific work, it made you connect more with spirituality and actually made you religious. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so you practice Islam. What was the journey like to get to that? And was there one kind of like ripple in the current that caused it in particularly from your work?
I think it's a great point. So I would say the following. I feel like when I was in the ghetto and I saw my friends being shot at, stabbed, I saw these horrible things, and then I saw myself being rescued so many times by forces that were unlikely to happen by chance. I felt like, okay, God must be real. And then once I went to Egypt as well, and I studied and I lived a more disciplined life, I just saw the blessings pouring in. And reading about science, reading about the brain, the complexity of the brain, the neurons, just made me go, look, how did that come about? It just made me more religious. As I went to I went to California and I met Ramachandran and I met top scientists, and I figured out, well, a lot of these guys behind the scenes are actually very religious, and they believe in prayer and things like that. The top scientists in the world. In fact, I noticed the correlation. The greater the scientists were, the more religious they were.
Really?
Versus, this is something, yeah, but often they don't talk about it in public. They keep it to themselves. That there's a lot of scientists like to be hard nosed and want to be played cool, and played.
Yeah, they don't want people to have the perception that their religious beliefs would impact the results of their studies. Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.